Good afternoon to everyone joining us here and also online. I would like to invite up our speakers, Mr. Awaludin Marwan, as well as Ms. Ratih Aryanti. And we'll begin the discussion. And lastly, Mr. Sigit Kurniawan is joining us online. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us both in person and online. If you didn't catch me in the previous session, I'm with the Center for International Private Enterprise based in Washington, DC. And I work on digital economy policy as well as internet freedom and digital rights. So this topic on cyber sovereignty versus open internet is very interesting to me, and I'm really looking forward to hearing perspectives from Indonesia. I also want to introduce more fully our panelists. So joining us online is Mr. Sigit Kurniawan, Group Coordinator of Advancement for National Interest, Directorate of Strategy for the National Cyber and Crypto Agency. Ms. Brigitta Ratih Aryanti, Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google Cloud Indonesia, and Mr. Awaludin Marwan, Senior Lecturer at Bhayangkara, Jakarta, Raya University. So thank you all so much for joining us. Before we jump straight into questions, I want to briefly make sure that everyone joining us has a clear sense of what the term cyber sovereignty and open internet mean before we dive right in. So one is, the principle of open internet means an internet that is open, free, accessible, global platform. And it primarily has to do with no blocking of information or data. And I think an important sort of well-governed, if you will, open internet is most likely what we see in the EU with GDPR and some of the newer legislation, such as the Digital Services Act and others coming down the pike. And then on the other side of the spectrum is this concept of cyber sovereignty, which suggests that national governments can and should regulate the online space in their domestic environments. And that can be very distinct from sort of the global open internet construct that we see across much of the globe. It's been made clear to me that this is a topic that's very much under debate here in Indonesia. And before we jump into questions, I just want to clarify that we're really going to take this discussion from the lens of cybersecurity. So without further ado, I'd like to start with Ratih. So my question for you is, how should we deal with the higher likelihood of cyber threats, considering we are more dependent on digital technologies in the way that we run companies, government, and communicate with each other? And what kind of threats are you seeing in your work or sort of that are quite common in Indonesia? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Louisa. Good afternoon, everyone here, everyone joining in Zoom. I see there's 76 people now attending. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation for Google Cloud Indonesia to be participating in this very important discussion. Thanks, Center for International Policy Studies, for the invitation. Now, to answer your question, if you may allow me to do it from the second part of the question, right? On what kinds of threats are we likely to encounter? So as we all have seen, as we all have experienced during these last 2.5 years, with school from home, work from home, etc., all of these increase in digital activities has also led to an increase in digital threats, right? And the SSN, maybe Pak Sigit can speak more on this later, but we have read the report that in 2021 alone in Indonesia, there were up to 994.6 million cyber attacks. That's a huge number, only coming from one country in 1 year. And what kind of threats are we talking about here, right? So you often hear the words such as phishing attacks, malware, ransomware, business email compromise, etc. But what does that actually mean? I think when we talk about the term, it does not sound too familiar to all of us, especially if you're not coming from the IT world or cybersecurity expert. But I feel and I believe that everyone here has actually experienced it at least once in their life. So it's an example of like a real cyber attack that can happen to any of us here, is that when one day you suddenly open your inbox or your social media or even your cell phone and you find a message or an email or a direct message from somebody, can be somebody you actually think you know, like a close friend, a close family member, or even an email coming from a reputable company, a well-known company that is suddenly asking for your personal information, right? Your bank account number, your credit card number, or even like your own password, or either from asking your personal information. It can also be that it asks you to open an attachment. And it seems simple, but actually statistics show that 90% of data breaches begin with these malicious emails. And 94% of the malware or malicious software being installed in computer systems actually also begin from malicious emails and also attachments. So I think it's a very serious problem, because it can also, it can attack anybody here in this room and Zoom, anybody close to us. And most importantly, they actually are not usually targeting individuals. They're actually targeting the organization where we work for, right? And so when we are being asked, then what should we do, right? With all of these growths and increase in threats, I think we believe in Google Cloud that advancing your cybersecurity posture is important to safeguarding privacy and security of our users. And so there's actually two elements that I would like to highlight here. The first one is in protecting our users, and the second one is in protecting the organization itself. So in protecting users, right, maybe just sharing some facts from Google. In Google, we build one of the world's most advanced security systems. Since the beginning of a product, we always build our products secure by default. We strictly uphold responsible data practices. So every product that we build is private by design, and we build easy to use privacy and security settings to make all of our users in control. And each of our products are actually protected using an advanced AI technology, right? And with this AI-driven technology, we are able to secure in a daily basis. Gmail automatically blocks more than 100 million phishing attempts every single day, 100 million phishing attempts in Gmail. And then Google Photos encrypts 4 billion photos, and Google Play Protect runs security scans on 100 billion installed apps every single day. So when you talk about trying to secure a very large scale of digital products, Google has that strong experience. And to be honest, even with that level of technology and scale, the most vulnerability and security today is still coming from social engineering and also from bad passwords. So when we talk about protecting our users, then I think digital literacy is very important and key here. And that's why we continue to remind everyone, including our users, to never share your passwords, to use strong, unique passwords for each and every account that you have, to use secure two-factor authentications. And if you happen to be a Google account holder, you can then try to go to your account management and then conduct a security or privacy checkup every once in a while, just to make sure that your account is protected. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, be careful with all of these malicious emails, messages that you seem to come from your uncle, your parents, but actually is being sent by a malicious actor. And I think that's all about protecting the users, right? But the other element that is also equally important is protecting the organization. Now, many organizations today still feel uncomfortable of moving their IT system into the cloud, right? Because they feel like they're giving up some power or control. But at Google Cloud, we actually think the opposite. We believe that by modernizing IT infrastructure and by moving their IT infrastructure into the cloud, we can actually help organizations improve their security and risk posture. And we can actually help them to become more secure as a company. And how do we do that, right? At least there's 3 elements where we can help organizations. The first one is on protection, where we provide a core secured infrastructure that is built with security in mind, from the hardware, from the encryption, etc., just to make sure that your organization's IT infrastructure is protected. The second one is on control. We provide customers and organizations with the ability to control their own system and help meet their policy, regulatory, and business objectives. And the third one is we help to also meet the compliance requirements of those organizations. So to reiterate, advanced cybersecurity posture that focuses on protecting users and also protecting the organization is the key to safeguarding privacy and security of our users.
Great. Thank you so much for that comprehensive answer. I would love to follow up with you on a couple of the points you made. But before that, I would like to turn over to Mr. Sigit to make sure we include him in the discussion. And thank you for joining us online. My question for you is, how does Indonesia approach cyber sovereignty or cybersecurity? And how would you compare that to how other countries approach these topics? And then in your opinion, what does it mean to have an open internet space, let's say specifically in Indonesia? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, moderator, for giving me the opportunity. I apologize for not being able to attend in person. I hope my voice is heard clearly. As we know, since the internet was founded in the early 70s, and the internet in Indonesia has been used by the public in the early the 90s, the purpose of the creation of the internet is so that we can connect with each other for minimize distance and space. Previously, the use of the internet for entertainment purpose only, but now users of internet are more intelligent in utilizing the technology of this borderless world. The internet has touched aspect of human life, and the internet has become a basic human need today. All of our activities are very dependent on the internet today. All our activities has been greatly facilitated by the internet, such as work, studying, and shopping from anywhere. Place and time are no longer a problem for internet user to make transaction. With internet, space restriction are like non-existent. The internet knows no national boundaries. We can communicate with anyone around the world without any restriction as long as it's still on a public network. Since the internet has become a relevant object for human life with a lot of benefit and also risk at the same time. In addition to convenience effort, the internet also has a negative impact, namely related to various cyber attacks that occur. Cyber attack consists of 2 we call technical and social. Attack of technical nature are related to data theft, malware, balance theft, etc. Meanwhile, attacks that are social in nature are related to how the internet can change mindset and the existence of fake news, or we call hoax. As it is known that the threat to a country does not only come from attack of a military nature by using attack from land, sea, and air. However, with the existence of cyberspace, threats to state sovereignty from cyber attack also need to be considered. Various cases of cyber attack that have an impact on national disturbance, such as the case of cyber attack in Ukraine that attacked the power grid, which caused disruption of its electricity supply. The Indonesian government, as a sovereign country and need to protect its citizens, is very necessary to implement cyber sovereignty. This accordance with the direction of Mr. President Joko Widodo, that was I quote, we must be prepared to face the threat of cybercrime, which included the crime of data misuse, data in the new world of our nation. Currently, data is more valuable than oil. Therefore, data sovereignty must be realized and citizen right to their personal data must be protected. In addition, the President also stated in the launching of a digital connectivity program in 2021, digital sovereignty and independence must be the most important principle in our digital transformation. Digital connectivity must be attached to the sovereignty of the nation in the midst of globalization and excessive competition. The government also is securing the country and its citizens need to monitor cyber attack that target vital assets that have an impact on the survival of country. Therefore, the concept of cybersecurity is not completely separate from the actual physical space. As large country and the largest internet user in Southeast Asia, Indonesia has become a very attractive market. The use of data is very large in Indonesia, especially personal data, so there is a need for data sovereignty. Some of countries already concerned about cyber sovereignty because it's very important to protect their country and also citizens from cyber threats. For example, in Singapore, cyber sovereignty has been included in its cybersecurity strategy, and even China has exercised independence in using the internet to protect its citizens from external cyber threats. And also Europeans, as you know, has consent to protect their citizen data with EU GDPR. For example, Russia, over the past 2 decades, they are pursuing a long-term policy that aims to build in cyber sovereignty. The law on sovereign internet appeared in 2019, but the concentrate plans were evident in 2014, are present among the security services as long-term aspiration even further back. The goal are strategic to escape what Russia sees as US dominance in cybersphere and increase control over information flow within the Russian segment of the internet. Russia has built up a capability to form a cyber operation over the last 2 decades, from relying on mercenary, hacker, or crude distributed denial of service attack, or we call DDoS, to employing its own specialists and utilizing advanced malware. In relation to cybersecurity sovereignty, Indonesia also used this view to determine course of action given the large number of traffic anomaly, as Ms. Brigitta said previously, more than 1.6 billion anomalies recorded in 2021 that monitor from BSSN, and a series of cases involving data theft, system destruction, and the spread of malicious program nationally. Indonesia, with a doubt, must regulate its cyberspace, not to limit, but as an effort to promote security, unregistered and unrecorded activity is one of the important concerns related to cybersecurity in Indonesia. We want to encourage cyberspace users to become ethical and responsible individual. The approach used by Indonesia is also not coercive approach to the party involved in cyberspace. Indonesia approach in accordance with our national interest as stipulated in the 45 Constitution. The use of the internet must also contribute to advancing public welfare, education in the nation, and participating in implementing world peace. In relation to cyber sovereignty, Indonesia also to view determine course of action. For Indonesia, having an open internet space means providing security for the community to interact in cyberspace in order to support national socio-economic growth without violation of human rights. This is realized with a series of regulations that the government tried to formulate and ratified by embracing Quad Helix, such as stakeholders including the government, business actor, academic, and also the society. So we can say that cyber sovereignty is very important, where the goal is protect the country and also that people. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Before I go to the next question, I want to see if either of you have a response to Mr. Sigit's comments. No? Okay, then I'll go to the next question for Mr. Awaludin. How might current approaches to deal with cyber threats impact civil liberties of internet users or end users and societal trust in this era of digital transformation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the questions. And thank you for the committee inviting me being here, sharing with you together about the cyber sovereignty and the open internet. And I would like to emphasize that the word given by Mbak Ratih about cyber hygiene and also mentioned by Pak Sigit is really important. The cyber hygiene, I think, is the most pivotal element to strengthening the digital community. It's very simple, like strengthening the password, using the trustful platform, activate the multi-factor authentication, and so on and so forth. These tasks should educate together with the community, the government, industry, and all stakeholders, including the academia. So lecturers and students also have a task to bringing together those information to the society. Because as long as we know that after COVID happens and then internet penetration getting higher from 60% now approaching to 80%, so many newcomer of internet users. So in the villages and in some rural areas, the cyber hygiene, digital literacy is very important to deliver. Also, as I follow forum talk by Laura also, that SMS or use internet for supporting their business. It is important to educate them how save their account and their technology. The most important one also after the cyber hygiene is legal consciousness that I call, how people handling with the cyber incident, they have to report to the authority, because the report of the authority is very low numbers if we compare to the incident. So if we see the Patroli Cyber, a platform developed by the Indonesian National Police, despite its very high numbers of report, but in the fact is more higher than the report. So we can encourage society to report the incident to BSSN, to Indonesian National Police, and also the Minister of ICT, because they have a tools, they have a framework to investigate, to help the society to handling with the cyber threat. And the next ones, I would like to promote a program, what I call educating the young hacker, because some incidents also occur because of I call it script kiddies. So many young people, they have plenty time, they learn to hack and attack many platform and technology, and it is very important to invite them as a part of digital economy development and educate them to not attacking platform without permissions, and encourage them to get certification rather than doing defacing attack, because defacing for them sometimes it feel like reputation, but this is actually the criminal offense, and some young hackers prosecuted by the criminal justice system because of they want to try attack a platform by defacing the platform, and then they go to the jail. So this is very important, educating the young hackers, because some industry also get damaged because of their act. And the last things I would like to describe how important the good internet governance, because of cyber sovereignty. It's more about the government actions, and some regulations have some consequences, like electronic provider registration. So all platform in Indonesia should register to the Minister of ICT. If they are not registered, and then the minister can block that platform. These rules should support by the administrative procedure with the based on the good governance. Because if the platform without knowing anything, and then they blocked by the government, and they do not have any channel to challenge the decisions, and it means that the government can conduct the maladministration or misuse of power. So to make sure that cyber sovereignty based on the rule of law, the government should follow the administrative law procedure based on the Indonesian law. So this is the platform that cyber sovereignty can also guarantee the human right, and as a what is it, the filter for the open internet as well. So that's a point by me. Thank you. That's all, Laura.
Thank you very much. Ratih, I want to go back to you. I mean, you talked quite a bit about the different products that Google Cloud has that can keep your users safe. And we've also heard a lot about the need for, stronger digital hygiene and sort of cyber resiliency or preparedness across young people, just end users generally in Indonesia, small businesses. And I'm wondering sort of, what's your view on what the private sector should contribute to sort of the overall cyber awareness environment versus what you all would like to see from government in terms of perhaps education or training or engagement with the general population or targeted groups that seem to have some of the highest risks when it comes to cybersecurity?
Sure. So I think I would break down my answer into two, right? From the first part on the private sector role, I guess since you're focusing more on the cloud part of it, and when we talk about cyber sovereignty, one issue that often is being discussed is about data sovereignty, right? So about the free flow of data cross-border in global internet, right? And I think the promise of internet actually lies from that very free flow of data, of having that open data communication across borders, and that free flow of data actually has enabled us to get the most out of the internet, right? By being able to connect with our colleagues that may not be in this room, for example, through Zoom, or by being able to search where the nearest supermarket is or the nearest pharmacy is during the COVID, to be able to get in touch of the necessary medication that you need, etc. And then aside from all of those benefits to us as individuals, when companies now think about transforming digitally, when they think about using the most advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, or even big data analytics, all of those emerging technologies actually require computing power that need to flow across borders, right? So when when a sovereignty or when a country decides to limit that free flow of data and information, then the ability of the organizations, both the private sector, the public sector of that country becomes limited, right, in terms of digital transformation. And I think that's why we strongly believe that working together, collaborating across different sectors to ensure an open and secure internet is always important. And then the next question will then be like, so how, like what is the private sector role? How do we play a role in all of this ensuring open data internet? I think there's actually two things that we can do. The first one is on having more of an international dialogue. So I think a couple of months ago, Google was part of the digital, forgot the exact name, Future of the Internet dialogue, where the US government, along with 60 other government and non-government partners, signed and launched this international commitment to ensure there are certain standards being agreed upon, to ensure there are still interoperability across standards that are being developed by different countries, because we can only ensure an open and secure internet if there are these, interoperable standardization when each of countries want to determine their own standard. So that's the first one, right? Being involved in all of these international dialogue. And then the second one is by bringing technology itself. So sometimes when we discuss with our government counterparts, when they say the word cyber sovereignty, digital sovereignty, what does that mean, right? From a cloud point of view, we try to break it down into at least three elements. The first one is on data sovereignty. The second one is on, hang on, let me check my notes just so I don't miss anything. Data sovereignty, operational sovereignty, and the last one is on software sovereignty. And for each of those elements, I think the basic thing that the governments of each countries are trying to achieve is actually more of, control and access to the data, and not actually on the location of the data. Although oftentimes they try to, enforce that data needs to be hosted in country. But when you dig in deeper into their intentions, it's more of, like Pak Sigit said, right, protecting the citizens and the data of the country. And when you talk about protecting and you bring technology in, it's actually not about having it located within your country and your jurisdiction, but actually having full access and control over it. And as I mentioned, each technology company actually has the technology to be able to, protect you and still give you the access to make sure you have access to that data wherever that is hosted. And you can still, utilize all of the technology that you need to digitally transform while at the same time still securing your citizens.
Thank you so much for that. I have additional questions, but before I do, are there any questions in the room before we continue? Please, we have a few questions here. Excellent.
So thank you very much. I have a question for Pak Sigit. I'm Irfan from UGM. As you have mentioned earlier, there are several approaches internationally regarding secure data governance in a country. For instance, Pak Sigit has mentioned about EU approach with its GDPR, and then China and Russia approach with their cyber sovereignty. In your point of view, Pak Sigit, which approach is the most appropriate approach for Indonesia and why? And I also interested to ask to Ratih about what should government should do to facilitate a safe cross-border data flow, because in your role as a private sector, you've mentioned about the privacy enhancing technology in the earlier, but then how government can enable a secure cross-border data flows? Because I think the most important actor to be secured in this case is the people who hold the data, who has the information. Thank you.
Mr. Sigit, were you able to hear that question or shall I repeat it? Otherwise, please jump in to answer.
Yes, I'm clear with to. Okay, thank you. In my view, the best approach in Indonesia to adapt for how cyber sovereignty is we can collaborate the approach from other country to adopt in Indonesia. I'm sorry, my voice is feedback. I can hear clearly.
Yes,
Test.
we can hear you, but we're
Uh,
sorry you're having feedback.
So because I am here, my voice back to me.
Okay, can we mute the room while he's speaking, please?
Okay. Test. Still feedback is so noisy in my voice.
While we get that sorted, let's maybe turn to Ratih to answer the second question.
Okay. Test. Hello, Director. Okay, I can continue.
Please.
Yeah. Indonesia. Until now, we don't have any regulation about the specific about cyber sovereignty, but we need to concern about how we protect our nation, our citizen from cyber threat. What's best practice for cyber security approach? I think we can need to approach with the citizen and industry for the how to we can create cyber sovereignty. So we can discuss with the any stakeholder, with industry, academia, and maybe society, how you can formulate what is our approach of cyber sovereignty. I think this is from me.
Great, thank you so much. And Ratih, did you want to take the question on safe cross-border data flows?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks very much for the question. So I think just to make sure that I understand it correctly, the question was more on how can the government facilitate safe cross-border data flow, right? Because I think the government is at least the person that should be in charge or responsible to protect their citizens. Correct me, right? Okay. So I think there's at least two things that the government can do. And I mentioned it earlier, right? Just like what I mentioned on how we can manage and find that balance between, utilizing the emerging growth of data-based, digital economy, and also protecting the citizens, is on utilizing multilateral discussions, because as we have been discussing, right, the trend is that each country thinks they know the best for their own citizens and their country. But because of that approach and that mindset, then each of them are, somehow creating a fragmentation of the world, of the internet. And in order to break that fragmentation and ensure that we can still, benefit from an open and secure internet, then we need to open discussion across different countries. That can be done bilaterally. And this, if you're an economist, you would think about it similarly to any kind of trade agreement. But this is more of a digital trade agreement, where bilaterally you can agree with another country on certain principles, where you can trade and have this free flow of cross-border data, because bilateral trade agreements are usually, more easier in a way to discuss, to agree upon, because it's only between two countries. But then you can go further and include more countries within that until you achieve like a multilateral agreement. And that's why we really appreciate the agenda of Indonesia's G20 presidency, where they actually put cross-border data flow is one of the important elements within the Digital Economy Working Group, which means that they understand the importance of this issue, and they are also trying their best as the leader of G20 for this year to ensure that the right principles are being agreed upon by at least the G20 countries. So I think the first one is on having that discussion and also digital trade agreements and multilateral agreements. And then the second one is, again, as I mentioned, going to technology. There's sometimes there is this skepticism really towards foreign companies, foreign technology companies, but actually, in fact, there are security capabilities that can only be offered by these big, large technology companies, that if a country wants to build it themselves, of course they can, but it will take time. And while they are building that secure system, they will be attacked from here and there. And so collaborating with these technology companies will actually help the government in their effort to protect their citizens, because as I mentioned, some of the capabilities, advanced security posture is being provided already by these big technology companies, and that can already be an alternative way for the government to secure their citizens as well as their people.
Thank you so much. I mean, you bring up an important point about the G20 focus on digital free flows with trust. And it sounds like here in Indonesia, there's still some, conversations taking place about what that means and what the implications are here locally. And certainly, there's a different, or I suppose, a bit of room between, cyber sovereignty and any interest in data localization versus data free flow with trust. I know we're close to time, but I believe I saw another hand raised. Okay, we have one additional question from the audience. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Rizky. I have two questions. The first one is for Mr. Awaludin. When I open a site for information or entertainment, sometimes it asks me for cookies. However, due to short amount of time that we have, sometimes we just click agree on all terms. Yeah, perhaps that is one of the social engineering strategy that they use. Otherwise, when we click I don't agree with the terms, they refuse to open or they limit some features on their websites. My question is, what kind of information do they usually include? Do they usually ask? And what do cookies usually include? And is my data being shared with other websites? And the second question is for Bu Ratih. I personally thank you, Gmail, for the spam filter technology. Because of the technology, I rarely receive any spam in my email. However, sometimes the algorithm still mistakes some emails as spam. I'm curious, how does the algorithm for spam filter technology works? Whether it first read our emails, or how do it really works? Could you please enlighten me in a simple way? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Awaludin, please go ahead.
Thank you for the questions. Before I answer, before I answer the second question, would like to add some clarifications of the first questions about the cross data flow. There are several requirements in Indonesia regarding to data transfers. At least there are three main requirements. First, about the private agreements. So the company or organization should have the agreement before they sending the data between them. And then second, they have to ask consent to the data subject. So the one who has a data should be asked by the company or organization that the data will be transferred to another country or another sectors. And the last one, the Minister of ICT provide a form to be filled by the organizations. So they have to report any specific data that they have to transfer to abroad. The second question about cookies. Cookies as a part of the requirement by GDPR. Actually, cookies from the technology, it means tracking. So they will collect our data, our behavior, what time we access the platform, and so on and so forth. But in GDPR, all the platforms should provide cookies in the first access. So they have to decide whether they accept all cookies or they refuse the cookies. Normally, if they refuse the cookies, they can still access the platform whilst the data not collected by the platform. But in Indonesia, cookies is not being the privacy policy and also not regulated by the government yet. So cookies is one of the most important regulations in the data processing actually. And would like to suggest that we have to learn which platform that we give our permissions. If the platform is trustful, like EU government, for instance, so it means that we give our permission to collect our data. I think it's still a trustful platform. But if the platform it's not really famous and we don't know exactly the organization or the company, we have to be careful. And the most important is we have to read carefully the privacy policy, because the privacy policy explain what kind of data they collected and to what extent that they proceed the data and transfer to several countries or so on and so forth. And privacy policy is the key that we have to consider the company doing the good governance or not, because privacy policy is the most important one. Yeah.
Sorry, if I can follow up on that. You know, one of the challenges out there is people do not read privacy policies. They're often in teeny tiny font. They're complicated. They're written in legalese. I don't think, you know, attorneys are reading the privacy policies that come when they purchase an app or what have you, right? So, I mean, who's reading those policies? Have you read all the terms and conditions of the devices you've purchased? And when you, I guess more importantly is, let's say you see something and you say, you know, I don't agree with that. What are your options? Return the device, cancel the app. What if you don't have those choices? I mean, I think it's unfair to expect people to read the privacy policies and them to have like a meaningful influence over that information, right?
Yeah, because the privacy policy is not customized one. We don't have any options whether we refuse or select some contract within template of the privacy policy. I think we have to make an option if we not trustful with the platform, and then we have to choose another platform. I think better to choose Google, for instance. And then Because very important. So many startup come from and established over the years, and startup with the concern of the data privacy is very important. They have to make very clear privacy policy, because privacy policy is the one of procedure that they have to show the data belong to the users is organized carefully. So they have to comply with the several instruments, like so many instruments in the privacy law, like National Institute for Standard and Technology in US, or ISO, or so on and so forth. So normally they ask for the privacy policy.
Great, thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. I don't read the terms and conditions either. I want to go to Ratih. I mean, the question is about the algorithm used to identify spam and Gmail. But taking a step back from that, I mean, when you have a, let's say, like, well, an efficient, well-functioning algorithm, it's typically learned based off of a tremendous amount of data. And so when we think about things like cyber sovereignty or limiting, cross-border data flows, we're also talking about communities whose data will not be part of informing these algorithms, and then to what extent would they be effective in those markets, right? And maybe that's a question for another time. But yeah, I'm curious to learn more about how the algorithm works and sort of how that fits into this discussion in a larger sense.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for using Gmail. It's a good information for me. And yeah, so as I mentioned, every single day, Google protects 100 million Gmail accounts from phishing attempts, and that's one of which is by removing all of these spams from your inbox. And how do they do that, right? So in basic computing logic, if that is even a word, excuse me, I'm not a technological person. I'm actually an economist that is now working at a tech company. So I may not know the right term, but basically, if you're using basic computing logic, it's usually you input something, you process it to get an output, right? But for doing all of these large scale AI-based technology where we do for our spam, for example, it's not input processing output. It's actually you give the machine input and the output, and the machine will learn how did that input produce the output. So for example, to make it easier, if you are also a Gmail user, I presume you're also using Google Photos. But if you're not, in Google Photos, the app actually helps you to classify the people that often come up in your pictures, right? So they can somehow know, oh, there's usually a picture of my husband, my daughter, my son, me. And how do they do that, right? It's by learning. They see from all of the stack of photos I put in Google Photos, hey, these people actually look alike, and therefore they actually belong to the same person, and then they can classify that. Using that kind of same logic, they actually learn from the amount of emails and the reports that come in that, okay, these spam reports are actually spam. And then the machine will try to understand, okay, maybe in a spam email, the email address is not correct, or usually there's these words, keywords, or usually there's these elements, but we actually don't know the logic. Again, the machine learns it by us telling them that these type of emails are spams. And that is why, because this is a machine learning technology, is very important for us to help the machine learn. And how do we do that? Is by us providing reports when we find that there are spam emails that we still receive. And that's why in the Google email, usually you have that button called report spam. By pushing that button, you actually inform the machine that next time such an email comes into my inbox, then you should mark that as spam, because I'm telling you now that that's an additional learning that they should know. Same thing as in Google Photos. Sometimes when you're actually browsing through the photos and they know that you are actually having some free time to do that, they will then ask you, hey, is this this person and this person in the photo the same or not? By us providing that, answer, yes, both of them are my daughters, like, yes, these are the same, yes, they are the same, then that will help them learn to be able to then classify in the future, to put it in the right classification. So I hope that that answers the logic behind it. And for your question earlier on, I think about inclusivity of like all of those machine learning, I think that's a whole issue to discuss about, but I think that's also one attention that the whole, the global internet community is also concerned about, right? In terms of the AI and ML technology and all of the ethics behind it. But yeah, I think we'll save that for another opportunity.
Sounds good. Maybe I'll catch you in a coffee break. We do have a question from the online audience. So this is from Shori from Universitas Indonesia. The question is, on the ASEAN level, will there be a common understanding about cross-border data flow soon? And I suppose I will put that question to Mr. Sigit first, but both of you are welcome to respond as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question. Wait, the question is, common understanding about cross-data flow soon. Okay. In ASEAN region, Indonesia active to the fora in ASEAN, and we still to discuss with the ASEAN member how to cross-data flow is we can make a consensus how to do data flow in ASEAN region, and some of our policies we can create with another ASEAN member state in how to protect our data, especially data of citizen for each member of ASEAN member state. But now I think it's a good opportunity with how to our formulate with how to protect privacy data in Indonesia.
Great, thank you so much. It looks like we are at time. So I want to thank all of you joining us in person here today, as well as all of our participants online. And of course, Sigit, thank you so much for joining us online. And to Ratih and Awaludin, thank you so much for your thoughtful comments and participation. We look forward to discussing these topics more, and we hope those of you online will continue to tune in throughout the afternoon. Thank you all.